All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a woman that I love, but who is even stranger than David. I must say, you are like a random story generator. This woman, a little bit before the show, I said, Tracey, what do you want me to say in your intro for the people? And out of nowhere, she says, tell them about the job interview I just had where the HR director asked me for my definition of bestiality. I said, no, I'm introducing you for this show. Whoa. And then she went on to tell me, like, how that all played out. And I'm not going to share that with you. Because I know that's the late show. But she's not going to tell you that story, but please welcome one of my favorite nuts from Fresh Ground Stories and the moth, often a Moth Grand Slam participant, Tracey Croisier, right there.
Thanks for coming out tonight, everyone. I don't have a sad story because I'm not like that. I think actually I'm like an illness of being pathologically perky because even in my worst moments, I'm like, this part really sucks, but it's going to turn. It's going to turn at any minute, and it almost never does, but there's like a part of my brain that does that. So I started having seizures when I was about 5 or 6, and it took a good decade to get them under control. So by the time I moved to New York, everything was pretty much under control. I just had to take my pills every day and life was good. And what I did not know when I moved to New York, there was some kind of weird snafu. New York didn't recognize a Texas prescription. I don't remember. All I know is at a certain point, I was out of medicine, and I remember calling 1-800-HIP-HELP. I still remember that 25 years later, and not getting any hip help at all. So I'll also do a quick preface and say that I lived in New York for 10 years, and then I lived in Connecticut for about 10. And people think that New Yorkers are assholes, and they're really not. There are 26,000 people in that city per square mile. And so really, we just need to get to our subway, and we need to go on this, you get creatures of habit, and you're like, well, if I get into the South Street entrance and I get into the second to last car, I always get a seat there. And that's what most people are thinking. And so when there's some kind of weird trauma, people don't stop because we won't get our seat on the subway, which is really important, really important. So there I am. I'm riding the subway from Brooklyn into New York. It's about 10 miles. And without warning, I have a seizure. And what I mean by without warning, usually I would get I would smell metal, or I would taste metal in my mouth. I'd have a little bit of a warning. I knew it was coming down the path, and I would, plan accordingly. So I'm sitting there in my subway, and then I'm on the floor, and I see out the subway doors that I'm at 4th Street, so I'm already in New York. I've been out, I don't know, 6 miles maybe? I don't know. The cool thing about New York is we don't get fazed by anything, so nobody's looking at me. Everybody's reading their newspaper. Nobody wants to help the person seizing on the floor. You're going to be late for work, and if you're late for work, there's 8 million other people that'll steal your job. So I'm laying there, and I'm at the Village, and the 4th Street subway is 4 flights of stairs, 4 solid flights of stairs, and all I'm thinking is, well, this is the part where someone is going to come and save me. I just know it. Again, pathologically perky. And I'm laying there, and this person comes up to me, and she's small. She's probably 4'8". She's ethnic. I'm not sure she speaks English. She's maybe 85 pounds, and I'm thinking, this is not what I meant when I thought this is the part when someone was going to come and save me. I was thinking more like Dudley Do-Right, and this guy was going to pick me up and carry me up 4 flights of stairs. Instead, I had this woman, and she says, come. And I'm like, really? So somehow she gets me up 4 flights of stairs. She doesn't seem to speak much English. I'm not sure. She hails a taxi for me, and she's able to say, does this happen often? And I was like, oh, so the thing about my seizures that was really fantastic is that I did not lose control of my bowel bladders ever, which was really, if you're in the pecking order of disease, this made me like the cooler person with epilepsy than the person that did, because they had separate issues that I did not have. So that's the good news. The bad news is that I suffered from aphasia, which is technically defined as loss of words. But for what it was for me is like, imagine a Super Bowl stadium filled with 75,000 people in your brain, and they're shouting the word. They're shouting, banana, and you can hear banana, and you open your mouth and you say, pencil. And then everybody in your head is like, no, we're going to do it again. Hold up a B. And they spell it and everything. And then it doesn't come out. So the woman gets me into the taxi. She says, has this happened before? Yes. And all I could tell her, I'm hearing the word epilepsy. I'm hearing the word grand mal in my brain. They're shouting it up there, the stadium people. And all I can come with is, it ends in IC. It's a disease that ends in ick. Suddenly, this woman who didn't appear to speak much English is excited about playing a guessing game with me. So she's like, you're anemic. No, that's not it. You're an insomniac. No, that's an AC. I need an IC. Diabetic. No, it's not that. Then she's like, you're psychotic. No, it's not that either, right? In my head, people are shouting, grand mal seizure, go ahead, tell her, epilepsy, go ahead. And all I can come up with is ick. I have something that ends in ick. So she gets me to the emergency room, and they play better guessing games with me, and so we figure out that I've had a seizure, they strap me up, they do an EKG to make sure I hadn't had a heart attack, and this woman, what I didn't learn until later, was this woman actually pulled out a lot of cash and paid for the whole visit. I know, isn't that sweet? And she just said, I want the best for her. Again, I didn't find this out until later when I was like, oh my God, I don't have health insurance yet, right? So I leave they check me out at a certain point, and the big trauma of the day, really, aside from the fact that this was the 80s and that there were no cell phones, is that I was supposed to pick up Sybil Shepherd at the airport that day. And so part of my aphasia problem was that I remembered Sybil Shepherd. And I remembered airport, and then I had a disease that started with ick. And so people just thought I was a little loco in the cabeza. And so meanwhile, Sybil Shepherd's like, where the hell is my person that was not there? So that was like, my big trauma was that I was going to lose my job. And then my second trauma was that I really needed to address the lack of medicine. So I'm calling hip help, and they're not helping. And I don't want to call my parents because I'm like, I'm an adult. I have moved to New York. I'm making my own decisions. And then finally, at a certain point, I'm like, really want my mommy. So I call my mom. I'm like, I don't know what to do. She's like, oh, I have a jug of your medicine. Just save for this special occasion. Fantastic. So she and my dad basically fly to New York the next day because they can't take it. And then I'm trying to call the hip help people again. I don't know why, because again, I'm like, I know that this time when I dial, they're going to be really helpful this time. And I go into a diner, which I don't know if it's still like this, but when I lived in New York, diners were ridiculous, like $25. So I go into this diner, and I order food, and I go to pay, and I'm like, crap, I forgot diners are like $25. And the woman goes, it's okay, Toots, it's on the house. It looks like you're having a hot day. And then I go back to the payphone, because again, I'm like, now that I've had food in me, I'm going to call 1-800-HIP-HELP again, and they're going to really help me this time. And I run out of coins, because again, there's no cell phone. It's the 80s. And this woman walks by, and she hands me a leather, it was Mark Cross at the time, leather pouch of about $8 in coins. And she just hands it to me and says, I think you need this, keeps walking. And I'm like, do you want the little pouchy thing back? But she's gone. So I use the pouchy thing, and then I go back on the subway, and I go home to sleep it off. And I lived in a really bad neighborhood that was gentrifying, and so they would a lot of times say things like, Whitey, go home. And so I went to the supermarket, and they all looked at me weird, and I'm like, oh, this is the part where they're going to make fun of me again. And this guy said, you need to go to the front of the line. Look like you're having a bad day. And I'm like, finally, I am having a really bad day now that you mention it. And so all these people let me go to the front of the line. And so I pay my groceries, and I walk home. And only really when I get home did I realize that they had left all of the EKG and EEG wires sticking out of me. So I don't know, maybe the woman gave me her coins because she was like, oh my God, weird Franken girl. Don't touch me. So all I can tell you is, at the end of the day, the universe is always going to provide for you what you need. I spent months going through the phone book. Remember the phone book? Going through the phone book. Her name was Maria Gonzalez, and I'm like, I'm going to find her. And because I couldn't believe when I checked out of the ER, I was like, oh, I don't have any money. I don't think I have insurance. I'm not really sure what's going on. They're like, she paid for it. I'm like, what do you mean she paid for it? Well, she had cash, and she gave us more than enough cash, and she said, just make sure that she gets whatever she needs today. So at the end of the day, kindness can come in any form, any size, any shape, any color, anytime, anyhow. And all you have to do is just be open to it. And when you leave the ER, make sure you pull the sticky things that they put on you off for easier sailing. Thank you, and thanks for coming tonight.